captivating chat. I really, really do appreciate all of you who join me, and I've come to start thinking of you as friends. And I mean that seriously. Some of you I have actually spoken to on the telephone because I work as Dr. Whimsy Anderson's personal assistant. Many of you may see me on her Tuesday show, Taco Tuesdays. And because I'm Whimsy's assistant for her medical practice and her intuitive reading practice, I go through her phone list and make calls every single day. And it's really great when one of you goes, "You're Chuck. You're Chuck. I know your voice. Yeah, I listen to you on Taco Tuesdays." And it always ends up becoming a nice, friendly conversation where they start telling me about themselves. I talk a little more about myself, how I found myself falling into this. And in many ways, I did fall into this because up until July of this year, I had no intention of ever doing a live stream. I had never done a live anything, and the thought of it, frankly, scared the Jesus out of me. But it was my dear, dear friend and mentor, Dr. Whimsy Anderson, who persuaded me finally to start doing her show. And I quickly started to fall into it, made a lot of mistakes as I went along, just as I'm making mistakes with this one here. I'm making them all in front of you, my friends, my family, but I feel your support. I feel your love. And I've had that confirmed to me verbally through phone calls. And also, since I started doing my channel, Chuck's Captivating Chronicles, I post at least two, usually three new videos a day where I discuss things like old Hollywood history, industry news. Sometimes I talk about my artwork, have streams from this show. I'm still finding my voice with that and deciding what it's going to be and what it's going to grow into, what it's going to metamorphosize into being. Right now, it's going through its baby steps. But one of the things I have found that I love, an unexpected joy, are the comments. Very engaging comments where people will expand upon something that I mentioned in one of my videos, or they have questions for me, or maybe a mild criticism. That's okay because that's how I learn. But I love this, and I want to expand upon it. Um, I certainly welcome your comments here. Welcome your comments on all my videos. I'm even thinking of maybe throwing in some more personal pieces, just talking about me, Chuck Dransfield. If any of you want to hear that, just little stories from my life, things that have had meaning to me, importance, observations, and inviting people to comment. We can start some running dialogues with each other. And that helps me to do a better show because I love when I look into this little camera here on this laptop, I like to imagine kind of like Romper Room. Remember that woman who would hold up the mirror and go, "Oh, I see Jimmy, I see Betty, I see Ethel," or whatever. I like to think that you are on the other end of this camera, all of you wonderful people, all you wonderful faces and personalities, and I can relate to you. I'm still adjusting to this. Um, I was warned early on that there would be the trollers. We know what those are. Any of us who have gotten into political discussions on Facebook or something, started arguing with anonymous people, I was warned there would be people like that who would be not so flattering. And, I would say 98% of the comments have been quite cordial, quite enthusiastic, very pleasant. Um, Saturday night, I had probably my first really nasty, mean spirited comment. I say that because it was someone who was actually attacking me personally. Even went so far as to claim I was talking with food in the corner of my mouth, which I can assure you. I would not be so stupid as to do a thing like that on the air. But he mentioned that. And then attacked my personal appearance and said, "I would suggest you stand a little further back from the camera." Anyway, I responded back, and I probably should not have. And I need to learn a vital lesson that people like that, it's best just to leave them alone and not fuel the fire. But I am a newbie to this type of social media and live broadcasting and doing videos and YouTube channeling. So it's all part of the process. Um, I hope you guys are doing good with your Christmas shopping and preparation. It's just unbelievable. It's 7 days away, actually less than 7 days. I'm certainly not ready. One of the things I've been doing, um, as you know, I'm a professional artist, and for certain people, I like to take the time to make something personal, like a little portrait, a little piece of art. It Because it's something that I'm giving of myself, and when I do artwork, um, it's something that it's it's something that takes a lot of energy out of me, a lot of time. So it's a real personal gift in every possible way. And sometimes I get a little hurt when people don't recognize that. I've had some people not only not thank me, they've sometimes not even acknowledged my gift. I don't know what that's about, and I'm wrestling with it, but it seems to be a thing. This is where I sound like some old guy, but it seems to be the younger generation thing where people don't thank people for their gifts anymore. I don't know what that's about. I've heard that complaint from quite a few. Maybe some of you have some comments there, but I guess I should stop talking about my personal self and get to the point of the show. And I always try to open with some entertainment news pieces. Um, I think the big story today is about Jonathan Majors, who was convicted by a New York jury for assaulting his girlfriend, Grace Jabbar. Well, the action against him was quite swift when he was dropped almost immediately by his agency, Entertainment 360. And the bigger thing was when Disney announced that he was being dropped from the Marvel universe. And also, he had an independent picture that got very good reviews at the Sundance Film Festival and was supposed to be scheduled for later release. And Disney has now dropped that film as well. So we will watch how this story unfolds, but that was the big story today. Another big story in the entertainment world was, of course, about our dearly beloved Celine Dion. And that's one that breaks my heart because I am a fan of hers. Um, I've spoken to a few people here in LA who have either worked alongside her or at least they've met her. They've known her in some way, and I hear nothing but lovely things about Celine Dion. She's a good soul, but her sister gave an interview today saying that, Celine has not, as we know, she has not been seen for the past 3.5 years, except for one appearance, and she has not been able to perform because of an illness literally called stiff person syndrome. Well, her sister today said Celine has lost quite a bit of control of her muscles. Celine is going into spasms that are just uncontrollable. There's no known cure or treatment for this illness. And so it's a very sad time for all of us. All of us. It's Celine has said it is her goal to return to the stage to perform, but we may never see Celine Dion again. See her perform. We may never even have the pleasure of her recordings, her beautiful voice if she can't sing. I don't see how she can with this illness. Um, so we'll see. We'll see. We send our prayers out to her. And of course, the other news last week was about Matthew Perry. The toxicology report was released, and of course, it was determined that he died from the acute effects of the drug ketamine. And of course, ketamine is a medication that's commonly used as an anesthetic. It's used for pain control, also used as an antidepressant. And it was known that Matthew Perry was getting supervised treatments of this medication, but it was believed that he had not had official treatment up until like a week and a half before his death. So there was some concern as to why the medication was in his system. We don't know. We don't know if, I'm just saying this out of speculation. We don't know if maybe he was even self medicating himself, which is not uncommon for people in positions like that where they have connections, they have access to medications like that. And unfortunately, I have known people in recovery, people, when I say in recovery from drugs, from alcohol, who have found ways to get a hold of substances. And I do know that I have nothing but respect and the greatest of sympathy for such people because I've seen what a struggle it is they go through. It's constant maintenance. And I've known addicts and alcoholics who have fallen off the wagon and they've had to get back on again. I think where I acquired a lot of respect for these people was when I once attended an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And the reason I attended, a good friend of mine was celebrating his 15th anniversary of sobriety. And it's a common thing to have a friend, a relative to be there at the end of the meeting to present them with a cake. And I was quite honored when he asked me if I would be the person to present him with his cake at the meeting. So I was there, sat there, and of course, it went through the rounds. Everybody standing up. My name is so and so. I am an alcoholic. And then it came around to me, and I, I was like, "Well, I'm Chuck. I'm not an alcoholic, but I'm just here to support my friend." And I meant that sincerely, but I could see eyes turning to me like, "Well, what are you doing here?" But he was quickly understood, and it was okay. And I have always been grateful I attended that meeting because I got to hear these people stand up one by one. First of all, I could feel the love in the room. I could feel the sense of family. I could feel the energy of support in that room. It was so powerful. But individually, people would stand up just to talk, whatever. And the story I kept hearing over and over. And first of all, I want to say I was really naive going in there. I think I was one of those people who thought, oh, once you're recovered, you're fine. You can go on with life. I thought it was like one of those Susan Hayward movies or something. And I got quickly educated that that is not what it is. I had people standing up and saying, I have been sober for 23 years and it only gets harder. Every single day, I crave a drink. In fact, every hour, I crave a drink. And this is after 23 years of sobriety. So, I would hear those stories over and over, and I kept thinking, my God, how brave you people are. How brave. This ongoing battle that you fight. And I've never looked at people the same way who go through addiction. And that's one of the reasons why I cannot be judgmental for someone like Matthew Perry. I can only imagine what he was going through. I mean, this was a man who said at the worst of his addiction, he was using his celebrity in ways like he would go to open houses, real estate open houses, just so he could go through medicine cabinets to see what they had in there that he could steal. And his rationale was, well, nobody's going to think big star Matthew Perry of Friends would be the one who stole the medication in my medicine chest. But that's what was going on in his life. And that had to have been such a low for him, such a humiliating low. So anyway, I hope his soul is finding some peace right now. Um, so anyway, let me think here. Today was a little bit of a rattling experience this afternoon, so I have to excuse me if I'm not as prepared as I normally am, but I'm trying to think what I was going to talk about here. But yeah, I always promise a Lucille Ball story. So I was trying to think of one. I had a longer one I was hoping to have prepared, but I thought it might be interesting to talk about what went on before I Love Lucy ever happened, before there was even the Desi Lou Studios. To give you a little background, up until the late 1940s, Lucille Ball had been under contract to Metro Goldwyn Mayer. They had originally had very high hopes in making her a big movie star, and that just did not quite happen. And by the late 40s, she was being relegated to smaller and smaller roles to where she finally just asked to leave her contract and she started freelancing. And this is the same time while Desi Arnaz was touring the country with his band. Once in a while, he would be lucky to play in the Los Angeles area and they could be together. But more often than not, Lucy and Desi could not be together. And that was a contributing factor to why their marriage was starting to unravel. And it was also difficult because they both wanted to have children. And as Lucille Ball once said on a talk show, she said, Desi and I found you can't conceive children over the telephone. You just can't, Lucy said. So they needed to find a way to be together. Lucy in 1948 started a radio series. It was before television, but radio was still big, and this was a radio comedy, situation comedy called My Favorite Husband. Not so coincidentally, produced by Jess Oppenheimer and written by Madeline Pugh and Bob Carroll Jr., who would go on to perform those duties for I Love Lucy. But that's a whole other story. We'll talk about it another time. But this was a chance for Lucy to do comedy that was tailored for her in front of a studio audience because that's how the radio show was done. So if you listen to those old radio shows, it's you feel the sense of a great comedian being born with each episode. Each show she gets a little better, a little better. And there's that exciting dance of energy that Lucy quickly acquired with her studio audiences. Hence, one of the reasons it was so important to have a studio audience for I Love Lucy. And of course, that's another story there about how they revolutionized the business, finding a way to have a studio audience with cameras. Well, with radio, it was a much easier thing because all they had were set up microphones on a stage. But basically, My Favorite Husband was the dress rehearsal for I Love Lucy. So anyway, they had the show going, and Lucy, when she was approached by CBS to turn it into a television series, well, her immediate response was, wow, Desi can play my husband and we can work on the show together. Well, she was hit with immediate resistance, mainly to the fact that, well, first of all, Desi Arnaz was not known as a comedic actor. I frankly had not done that much acting at all. He'd made a few movies here and there, but he was considered very much an unknown quantity. But more so, there was also the belief at the time that America was not going to accept her and Desi as a married couple. The all-American redhead with the Cuban, with the thick Cuban accent. They said, no, America is never going to accept that. They're not going to believe you as a married couple. And Lucy just thought that was so absurd. She said, but we are married. We are a married couple. And, and so this was maddening to Lucille Ball. And she was ready to just, at one point, almost give up show business altogether so she could be a housewife and a mother, start a family with Desi, hope that he would stay home. But, she came to her senses and realized that was not feasible. They were both very immersed in their lives in show business. So they had to find a way to bring it together. And so they thought, what can we do on our own? How can we prove that America would accept us as a married couple? And so Desi got the great idea. He said, Lucy, when I go on my next tour, I want you to come with me. Why don't we just incorporate you into the show? We'll give you some songs, we'll do some things together, give you a comedy bit. We'll go on the road together. Well, why don't we test this out? And Lucy thought, well, we have nothing to lose. Why not? Well, it rather than just joining his nightclub act, they decided to really pursue this. And Desi's friend, Pepito the Clown. You may remember him from I Love Lucy because he played Pepito the Clown on one of the early episodes. He was quite instrumental in forming a lot of the acts for the show, a lot of the routines, such as Lucy and her trained seal bet, which, she did on I Love Lucy, that, when she was in the suit, and Desi was throwing fish in her mouth and she was playing that bizarre um, instrument with all the blow horns on it, and there was a clever name for it that's escaping me right now. I will probably remember it after the show. I think wish I could edit that back in. But Lucy also uh, recruited her dear friend, the legendary Buster Keaton, to help her with her comedy and the act. Um, Buster Keaton had, in the 1920s, during the silent era, literally been the biggest star in the world. In 1925, he was the number one box office draw in the world. Well, when sound pictures came in, it was actually a number of things that contributed to Buster Keaton's career unraveling. Uh, Sound motion pictures was part of it. He also lost a lot of his creative control from his studio MGM that wanted to change his image, which, come on, you tell Buster Keaton how to do what you do. So he was very depressed about that. He was in serious trouble with one of his wives, going through a terrible divorce, and his alcoholism escalated. So by the time Lucy met Buster Keaton in the 1940s, it was a low period. He was working at MGM as a $300 a week studio gag writer. That's how far he had fallen. And Lucy, of course, her career had started to fall apart at MGM. So they were kind of like immediate comrades. They started getting together on the studio a lot. And Buster, well, he, being the astute comic genius he was, he immediately saw the beautiful gifts of Lucille Ball. He immediately recognized her incredible timing. He once went on record to say in an interview in the 1960s, he was once asked the question, who do you consider the greatest comedian who ever lived? And he said, Lucille Ball. Her timing is impeccable. So he saw her gifts and he started to take Lucy under his wing and started teaching Lucy his comedy. And now you want to talk about a masterclass between two giants. That was it. But anyway, to form this act that they were going to do across the country, Lucy called upon Buster Keaton to help her create some routines along with Pepito. And that's where a lot of the material came from. And if you watch the subsequent I Love Lucy episodes, particularly the episode where Lucy and Desi recreate part of their vaudeville act, I think it was like the sixth episode they ever did, you can see the influence of Buster Keaton. In fact, I personally see it all throughout the run of I Love Lucy, just little subtle things here and there that are so, so Buster. And I love that. I love they transferred that to each other and they played off each other. But anyway, Lucy and Desi went on the road and they found in every city they went to, the audiences adored them. I mean, standing ovations, cheers, where Lucy was almost brought to tears on stage some nights because there was so much love for them coming from the audiences. And they said that, and that was all the confirmation they needed that America was going to accept them as a husband and wife comedy team. They got that. But it also helped quite a bit. They were getting rave reviews in all the local newspapers, each city they went to. And that did start to catch the attention of CBS. That did start to catch the attention of a potential sponsor for I Love Lucy. And it did make it a lot more realistic, the notion of putting Lucy and Desi together on the same show. They even appeared on television together in 1949. It was a live broadcast, as most television shows were done, hence why I Love Lucy had to invent a way to film their show in front of an audience. They were true pioneers. But this was comedian Ed Wynn's show. He was an old friend of Lucy's, and Lucy and Desi did the live episode, and that was their television debut. If you go on YouTube, you can find a very grainy, poor quality kinescope film of it. So it does exist, at least in some segments. And of course, a kinescope was so primitive. That's where you actually took a film camera and put it in front of a television screen and you filmed off the television. That's why when you watch those kinescope films, they look so flat and so awful. But hey, it's the only thing we have as record. And I'm so grateful that we do have Lucy and Desi's first television experience preserved. Now, the tour was, there was some heartbreak on the tour and some highs and some lows. When they were in Chicago, their hotel room was broken into, and Lucy had all of her jewelry stolen. And Lucy was someone who was not about flashy, valuable jewelry. She was about sentiment. So things like early pieces Desi had given her were gone. And one of the things that was taken was her 40 carat aquamarine engagement ring from Desi. So that hurt. And Desi offered to replace them for her, but she said, no, you can't replace that. They even worked that into an I Love Lucy episode once. You may recall when they were in Connecticut and Lucy lost her wedding ring, and it ended up in the tail of a kite. And somehow ended up in Lucy's hamburger they were grilling on the barbecue. But Desi said, I'll buy you another ring. I'll buy you a ring with big diamonds all around it. And Lucy goes, no, I want the ring with the little diamonds going halfway around it. And that was so reflective of who Lucy was. And another thing that happened while they were on the tour, they were trying so hard to conceive a child. Well, Lucy was finding herself getting nauseous. And she thought maybe that had to do with her being so upset, losing her sentimental jewelry, the pressure of doing the stage show, knowing that she had 6 months of contractual work obligations to meet. So she was anyway, she went ahead, had a rabbit test done. That's how they did it back in those days. And she even gave her hairdresser's name instead of her own name to keep the press from finding out about it. Well, journalist Walter Winchell had connections. It said he even had connections at hospitals, and he found out things that no one else could. So it was between shows. Lucy and Desi were at a theater, and they were between shows, and they were both resting in their respective dressing rooms. And Lucy had the radio on, and it was Walter Winchell who announced Lucy's pregnancy. And they neither of them knew this for themselves. And Lucy was like, and Desi ran out of his dressing room. Were you listening to Winchell? And so they were so ecstatic. So that was a lovely thing they found out on the tour. Now, sadly, Lucy ended up miscarrying the child. That's another story. Happily, she did get pregnant again, and that was with her daughter, Lucy Arnaz, and that was a successful pregnancy. But so it was a roller coaster ride of emotions doing that tour. But that's how America accepted them. That's how networks accepted them, sponsors, and hence how we got our I Love Lucy. So that's my Lucy story for today. I hope that was not too long winded for you. I haven't even looked at comments here because I was so immersed. Let's see if anybody has a question for me before I sign off. I see that I've almost reached the half-hour point here. Um, I can do an intuitive reading for someone. If somebody'd like to ask me for one, or if anybody has a question, I'm just scrolling here. I'm seeing some sweet comments. Oh, here's a question. How did I end up in Hollywood? Okay, that's easy enough. Um, I grew up in a little rural town in Virginia. and I don't know, I just never fit in there. I was a weird kid, and I can remember as early as 5 years old saying, "I wanna live in California. I wanna live in Los Angeles. I wanna be in Hollywood." And I think where that stemmed from, I was a lonely kid. I was bullied a lot. I didn't have a lot of friends. So, as corny as it may sound, television was my friend. So I watched an absurd amount of television. I became friends with like Andy Griffith and Carol Burnett and Lucy and all these series, and with my mother, we would watch a lot of the talk shows, things like Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Dinah Shore. I'm really dating myself here, but they would all these stars would be talking about their lives in Los Angeles, talking about their lives in Hollywood. So I think from a very early age, that seed got planted in my head, deep, deep in my subconscious. Well, I want to live there too. This is where I want to be. And as I got older, I wanted to pursue acting. There's a lot of things I do. I'm a writer, I'm an artist. I've done a little bit of professional acting, but that bug was in me. And so if you're wanting to pursue acting, you either go to New York or you go to Los Angeles. And even in college, I was an art major in college, but I never got past my initial dream of coming to LA as soon as I could and seeing if I could pursue acting. So, 3 years out of college, that's what I did. I had been saving my money, and I think of the Beverly Hillbillies, how they loaded up the truck and they moved to Beverly. It was almost like that. I had a U-Haul truck with every possession in the world to my name packed tightly into that. And then I had my car hitched up to the back of that. Now, I had never driven a truck before in my life, and I had never towed anything in my life. So I had to get initiated very quickly. The old thing about throwing the kid in the deep end of the pool. That's kind of like doing these YouTube shows has been like being the kid thrown in the deep end of the water, going on live, and you just pray you'll start swimming instead of sinking. So I drove a U-Haul truck, towing my car from Virginia all the way across the country in the middle of the summer, the hot summer, to Los Angeles. And it was pretty good until I started to hit the deserts of New Mexico, Arizona, and of course, California. At one point, my cat at the time almost didn't make it because of the heat. She almost had a heat stroke. I had to pull over into a gas station, go into the restroom. I had to fill a sink up with cold water, soak my cat in the water, poor thing, and then just pour some water down her throat and revive her. And thankfully, she was okay. This was one of those, this was in 1985. This was one of those primitive U-Haul trucks that did not have air conditioning in it. You had to just roll the windows down, and all it had was an AM radio. God, I should just do another show about this. I could talk endlessly on this, but I'm remembering now driving through Oklahoma at like 1 in the morning, and it was just pitch black, and there was nothing in sight, no signs of life. And the only thing I had to keep me awake was the radio. And it was just this horrible AM radio with these awful stations. Anyway, that's another story. So I made it out to LA, and I was lucky. It was a time where it was more affordable. It wasn't so hard to get an apartment like it is now. I was probably a little naive about that because it was so easy for me, but it just felt like everything fell into place. Now, I had mixed results with acting. That's another thing I can talk about, little things here and there. Nothing momentous, obviously. I think you would know my name better if anything had happened. But anyway, to answer that question, if I hopefully I was not too long-winded, but that's how I made it out to LA. And I see a message here from Veronica. Oh, Veronica Lake. Watching from Virginia Beach. Well, hello, Veronica. I know Virginia Beach quite well because I went to college in Richmond, Virginia, obviously, and out to Virginia Commonwealth University. And it was always a fun thing to go down to Virginia Beach. If you have any more comments, anything to tell me, please. Thank you for joining me. Let's see. I'm getting looking here. See if there are any other comments real quickly. Apologize, it's a little awkward. Aw, Joyce, yes, you were just saying here your grandchildren send the cutest thank you notes. Well, I love that. I do. You know, I still like to do handwritten thank you notes. I think it goes back to what I said about making art. There's just something about a handwritten note where it's coming from you and showing you took the time and the effort to thank someone sincerely. So anyway, just scrolling back here. I should probably go in a moment, but would anybody like a reading or have another question for me before I sign off? Looking, I don't see any questions. And I am at the 35-minute point. Thank you, people, for putting up with me today. This is not one of my more polished episodes, but I'm learning and I'm loving doing this. And, please keep looking at my channel because I'm putting a lot of videos on there. Right now, I'm up to 3 a day. I try to do at least 2, but I've been doing 3, running the gamut. I'm doing pieces on famous Hollywood couples, some Hollywood scandals, certainly news events, what have you. And as I said, I may start putting some personal pieces on there too. I was very surprised. My cat, Sasha, actually got one of the biggest responses I've ever had. And my manager, Debbie, said that I should probably give Sasha her own channel. And I think my little Siamese princess just might be receptive to that. I think she would love the spotlight. So, in any respect, thank you. Please like and subscribe my channel, Chuck's Captivating Chronicles, and be here. Here each Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you. Goodbye. So I can